It's the summer of 2009. Things are riding high in the USA as Barack Obama is on track to becoming the first president to basically undermine every single thing that he sold the voters on him doing in his time in the office, and ultimately becoming remembered mostly for drone strikes and continuing America's pretty shitty diplomatic policies across Africa and the Middle East. I guess that's actually most presidents. I think the thing he's most remembered for is probably being the first African American president. People liked to pretend that it meant a real step in the right direction for race relations in America, which, if anything from the past decade should have taught you, things did not drastically improve.
America confronted a frightening reality that the white supremacist movement is alive and well here.
But amidst all of this, a hot new show dropped onto Fox. A show all about kids singing and dancing to the hit pop songs of the past and current, all while dealing with teachers who have frankly way too much personal baggage and shit going on that they bring into those students' lives.
What happened to the seashell bikini?
I wasn't comfortable.
Marley, we're all trying to win a championship here, but you put your personal agenda above that. You're suspended for the rest of the week.
That's right. It's Glee, a show that quickly became a meme, but was so popular that it basically almost came to define a genre that did exist before it. And we're actually going to be skipping forwards a bit in this story. We're going to be teleporting ahead 3 years to the first major episode to feature a trans character, that of Saturday Night Gleaver, Season 3's episode 16, an episode that first showcased the character Unique Adams, played by actor Alex Newell, who is gender non-conforming and uses any/all pronouns, which is, I hear it's a pretty cool thing for the people to do. Unique Adams was originally created as part of a prize for the Glee Project, a reality TV series that was used to basically audition people to get onto Glee, and to hype up the main show.
So are you guys ready to perform for this week's guest?
Yes.
I hope so.
It was a weird spin-off idea, to be honest, but Unique was originally going to be a 2-part special episode on trans/genderqueer people before they ultimately reintroduced them into season 4 and made them more of a recurring side character thanks to the great reception that their gender narrative/story got. Though ultimately, they ended up kinda dogging Unique when Rachel Berry refers to them in the Hurt Locker Part 2 in Season 6 as cross-dressing Mercedes, because she can't remember Unique's name.
Any of their names. There was Huck's brother, and then there was cross-dressing Mercedes, and the one with the fat mom.
Kinda racist shit from the main character there. However, Unique does actually come back later in Season 6 again for the other episode I want to talk about here, that of Season 6 Episode 7, Transitioning, which focuses on the story of Coach Sheldon Beast, who comes out as a gay trans man and is coming back to the school after having had surgery. So yeah, we've got 2 trans episodes, one about a black trans woman played by a gender non-conforming actor, and one about a gay trans man played by a lesbian female actor. It's a lot to get through, and at the very least, now you know what's coming. So before we get into it, let me quickly sing you a song about today's sponsor. Money, it's a crime. Share it fairly, but don't take a slice of my pie. And if you want to contribute to my pie, then the best way to do that is by going to my Patreon and becoming a subscriber. That's right, it's a Patreon plug. It helps me keep the channel running and making these videos somewhat smoothly, and look, I know money, so they say, is the root of all evil today, but I also need to pay rent and eat food. With that out of the way, let's get to this first episode.
So here's what you missed on Glee.
The episode begins with a very helpful reminder of what's happened previously in an incredibly annoying voiceover, all of which we can just ignore, because who cares what happened before there were trans people in this teen comedy drama. Yeah, I said it, okay? That's literally the vibe of the channel. It's not called the trans episode for nothing, but our time here really begins about 5 minutes in, after some dance numbers and references to the Saturday Night Fever theme of the episode, a theme that is only truly represented in the music. Like, they aren't really doing a disco or 70s narrative, actually. It's just like they wanted to do the Bee Gees and the songs from the film, and that was a good enough reason for them to do it. Honestly, it's telling that the people who worked on this show went to work on Riverdale too, because that show also didn't give two hoots and a holler about continuity and logical story structure.
Or
what?
or I wide release the video of your father shooting Jason.
Like, why do the two cheerleader lesbians always wear their cheerleader outfits? Like, you don't have to wear them outside of practice and the games. You can just wear regular clothes. I understand that they look sexier, and I guess people want to see sexy lesbian cheerleaders. And the pacing. Don't get me started on the pacing of Glee. They throw shit out like they're speed running scenes to get to the next thing that will hopefully keep the audience paying attention, with cuts and flashbacks abused like Zack Snyder abuses the slow time in his films.
Pure power of unadulterated disco.
It'd be funny if I did a flashback there. I don't know if I've got one planned, but if I did a flashback there, that was very smart. Anyway, we get introduced to Wade Adams, our pre-transition unique Adams, as they come up to Mercedes, and the gay one from Glee, to tell them how much they love their performances and are inspired by them. Wade is apparently in vocal adrenaline, which is the competition this year for the Glee Club, but they assure these two that they are not here to spy on them. They're merely here for help with something. That something being that they seem to be getting a pretty rough time from the coach of Vocal Adrenaline, who seems to have taken on board if I abuse my students and scream at them like J.K. Simmons from Whiplash, really break them down and make it clear how utterly unspecial and useless they are, that's what will give me success in my field.
No one is special. You're the Borg. You don't like it? There's the frickin' door. Am I clear, Chunks McGriddle?
Wade is also apparently having difficulties too with their family and the other kids at school, and their way of dealing with this is to pretend to be someone else in their head. Although not exactly. They're actually being the person that they idealize themselves as, the real who they are inside. And that person is a woman named Unique.
The real me. I even have a different name. Unique.
We get to see a little bit of this in action when Wade contrasts how they actually engage with the Glee duo with how they imagine what Unique would have done.
Kurt Hummel, Mercedes Jones. Kurt Hummel and Mercedes Jones. Unique worships the red carpet you walk on.
Now, at this point, it's not 100% clear if the direction of the show is going to be a drag thing or a trans thing. I mean, it's obvious eventually it's going to be a trans thing, because I'm talking about it here, and I've already said that, and I looked it up, but there are possible directions if you didn't know that. And even the queer people in charge of Glee can still make the cis mistakes that get made around drag identity and trans identity, conflating the two and mixing up exactly what goes into each community that makes them somewhat separate. Regardless, Unique, as I will call her from this point onwards, because it seems relatively clear that this is how she would like to be named and seen if it wasn't for the peer pressure and difficult social navigation that would come from that identity. Well, Unique wants Mercedes and the gay guy from Glee's help to go onto stage at the next Vocal Adrenaline performance as herself. wearing a dress and makeup and heels, because that is who she feels like she is inside, and it's kind of like a bold coming out choice.
Enough courage to be him.
Actually unique to her. I want to go on stage wearing a dress and heels. Because that's who I feel like I am inside.
Yeah, I mean, that whole thing is moving very quickly away from a guy who does drag to very clearly a trans thing pretty fast, and that's certainly good for me. Also, is it implied in this scene here that Sue is using Becky Jackson, one of her cheerleaders with Down syndrome, as free labor to make a suit rather than the host of Viennese tailors that she claims she has?
Which I am having a cadre of expert Viennese tailors.
I know Sue is a villain, or villain-esque character, but that seems pretty dire and dark to have a person with disabilities listed as a minion, and the wiki describes her as serving Sue. I don't know, it just kind of feels distasteful. Then the old people start performing more Bee Gees to convince the kids that disco doesn't suck, and we don't have time to get into the whole history of disco, the debate around that sucking perspective and the racism with it. Just know that it's pretty sad to see how successful the whitewashing was here, that its black and gay origins ended up becoming middle white American bland.
All right, hit it.
Thankfully, Mercedes does a little bit of rescue work, which makes a lot of sense. She did basically carry Glee on her back for most episodes, giving us a performance of Disco Inferno by the Tramps, a long-standing black soul, R&B and disco band from the 60s through to the 70s, whose incorporation of the line "Burn Baby Burn Disco Inferno" actually led to the song getting banned from numerous stations because that was the infamous line associated with the Watts riot in LA, a series of race riots after a black man, Marquette Fry, was pulled over for drunk driving and struck in the face by police, but that was ultimately really about the long-standing racial discrimination and injustices faced by the black community in LA from the city council and the police department. That actually is really kind of sad, how this information that I'm giving you, really important stuff from the history of disco and its roots, is not something even mentioned or explored by Glee, who instead just completely ignores that whole vastly important element to the music. Sorry, we're meant to be talking about the trans character, not US race relations and its ramifications on the development of music and lyricism through the decades. Classic me getting lost in the weeds. Let's just agree that Glee is some real white people shit, and that Mercedes was one of the best goddamn characters and singers on the whole fucking cast, and jump to the next scene featuring Unique Adams.
Porcelain, Wheezy, have a seat. Schrader.
Our next scene with Unique doesn't actually feature Unique, but wait, hold up, don't click away. Don't click away just yet. You've made it this far. You're obliged to finish the video now. It features Sue dragging in Mercedes and the gay guy from Glee to ream them out for betraying the school by selling secrets to the enemy. Because, see that aforementioned Sue being a terrible person who has apparently bugged the school as well?
You may as well know I have a large portion of this school bugged and wiretapped.
Legality aside, this gets a whole lot worse when Sue reams them out specifically for telling Unique, who they all keep calling Wade because apparently we haven't actually clarified this is a trans plot yet for the characters, I guess. Well, they told Unique that she shouldn't perform as herself due to this being Ohio, a place that has, well, let's just call it barely contained hostility towards queer people permanently bubbling under the surface, especially showcased by the state happily jumping on all those trans ban bills in recent years. See, Sue wants them to go and tell Unique to do it because Sue thinks it will go terribly, and that will ruin Vocal Adrenaline's chances at regionals. hoping to use the transphobia in the judging to secure an easy win for the Glee club from her school, which is called New Directions.
I don't think many people are going to be down with that.
Exactly. He'll tank them at regionals.
Which is really, really fucked up. Like, it seems as if Sue is constantly in a war with past Sue to see who can do the worst possible thing without getting fired, though realistically, she must have a rock-solid tenure or something after all the shit she's pulled. Also, the winner of that race is future Sue, who becomes the VP for the Republican Party. She wins that one. Like, I don't agree with the idea that Unique should have to hide who they are to satiate others, but I understand the possible dangers associated with coming out. Like, if things go badly here, the lowest thing that can happen is vocal adrenaline tanking. The worst possibility rhymes with hydrant fault and girder because we don't know how people are going to react to a black trans woman in Ohio. Some more bullshit happens, including this line here that feels like the most cis-straight white thing that Will could possibly ever say.
There's also a powerful way to convey your dream that marriage equality will someday be a reality for everyone.
And this line that I have no explanation for, nor do I even want to imagine what went into dreaming up that dialogue, though I imagine it begins and ends with cocaine.
Just like I'm 1,000% sure that our man-child piano player keeps a petite Eurasian locked in a trunk underneath his bed.
Oh, and how can I forget the lesbian sex tape spliced with a cat doing household chores as a present from Brittany to Santana to try and get her famous? Or how about when Will makes Finn watch Saturday Night Fever because that will make him realize something big about himself and what he wants to do? God, Glee has so much going on all the time, and they keep making it so that the big solve to everything is music. Our duo, however, ends up going along with Sue's plan, and we watch them as they arrive at the vocal adrenaline performance, feeling terrible for effectively setting up a trans person to have what they presume will be a terrible coming out story, deluding themselves that Unique would never actually follow their advice, right? A pretty wild thing to tell yourself, considering how she specifically came to them for help and that she idolizes them.
We should have never given Wade those high heels.
Look, there's still time to stop it. I mean, he wouldn't actually go out like that.
However, they're actually going to the pre-show to make sure that Unique will not be dressing up as a woman, telling her that she can't do it. No matter how many flamboyant outfits the gay guy wears, it's nothing compared to them openly challenging the gender binary so blatantly.
I admit that I've worn some flamboyant designer outfits, but I've never dressed up like a woman.
Which leads to the gay man getting shut the fuck down by Unique, who tells him that the reason for that is because he identifies as a man, and therefore doesn't care as much about appearing as a woman as she does. Which is pretty cold, but also, thank you Glee for at least giving the character this moment to really explain the situation to people who don't seem to be getting it. Illustrating clearly how dressing as a woman is not something Unique is doing as a costume, but is who she is and wants to be perceived as. Seriously, the gay dude gets slayed here with the classic line, "I thought you of all people would understand," which if you ever get told by someone, you fucked up pretty bad with your inter-community attitude and really need to check yourself.
I thought you of all people would understand.
Unique performs as herself, shocking her coach, who I guess didn't see this coming somehow. Like, impressive stuff from the rest of the Vocal Adrenaline crew for supporting Unique in this, and also keeping it hidden so they could get away with it. Those are the real allies of this episode for some reason, and future things about them, or past things about them, would make it clear that this shouldn't never have happened, really. They don't even have names as far as I'm aware, but they're, like, bad people. It's weird for them to be like, yeah, we'll go along with your trans coming out story even if it tanks our performance. That's cool. And on the note of the performance, Unique gives an incredible version of Boogie Shoes by KC and the Sunshine Band. A performance that is one of the rare cases of the Glee version being better than the original. Probably helped a little bit by the fact that the lead singer for the band was Harry Wayne Casey, a white dude from both Irish and Italian backgrounds, who performed with a predominantly black backup band who were originally going to be called the Sunshine Junkanoo Band before it got changed to just Sunshine Band. Junkanoo being a reference to the fact that he got his band from the Junkanoo Festival in Miami, the festival being a dance celebration that African American slaves from British Jamaica, when, we were doing the whole chattel slavery, celebrated around Christmas times the fact that they got a couple of days off. It then following their descendants and becoming a folk tradition. See, music is interesting, if a little bit rough around the edges because of the whole giant shadow of slavery in America. And Glee not really caring about showcasing or discussing this is so unfortunate. On the side, I also think Finn cheats in the competition that's happening in the main story, because he gets, most of the rest of the Glee group to help him, including some of the people that he is competing with to do his song. Which doesn't seem like it really facilitates it being his song, but frankly, who gives a shit about that stuff? What happens with Unique and her big trans debut? Does it go well? Well, we don't really know from this episode, to be honest. It kinda gets relegated to a comment between Mercedes and the gay guy whose name I will not learn if that wasn't blatantly apparent by this point, about how brave she was for doing what she did and pulling it off.
I cannot believe Unique pulled that off. Something to be said about the power of a dream.
It's not very clear what pulling it off translates to there. I don't know if that means she is staying on with vocal adrenaline, if she gets accepted by her friends, if her family come to terms with who she is, if Ohio can handle her or not. It's really disjointed, to be honest, from Glee here. It's like they wanted a trans narrative, but didn't really care too much about putting in the whole effort to see it through to a satisfying conclusion for those in the audience, and instead relegated it to whatever for a character they didn't know they were going to be bringing back. Unique does come back though, and we get a lot more from her down the line. We get to see a fair bit more about her life and who she is, and an episode which gives us not actually too much of that, but I do want to focus on because of the fact that it has a trans man in it and introduces another trans angle, is the other trans episode that I wanted to talk about, Transitioning. So let's dive into that one and find out if Glee could do a bit better and a bit more cohesive / conclusive 3 years and 3 seasons later.
I'm living in a dream. The paycheck's so big, we moved into a higher tax bracket.
This episode begins with Bon Jovi and Will coming off as a conceited prat as he extols the virtues of working for the previous villains of Vocal Adrenaline. So, some things have not really drastically changed in that time gap so far, but we've gotta hope that the racism at least has decreased somewhat between 2012 and 2015, right? Also, to quickly stop us before we can actually get to the trans stuff, was this guy here doing a "my wife" joke? Or is his accent just so strong that it sounds like he's always doing that?
My wife says this one is the best.
I've listened back to it about 4 times at this point, and I seriously cannot tell. I mean, he talks about his flamin' gay son in a way that implies he's the assorted gentleman that I think would stereotypically speak in a strong Republican-esque accent, such that would turn my into ma. But it's always hard to judge with Glee what they intend to be a joke. Then some people from the other Glee club that Will used to run get egged by his new team, and the drama portion of this episode begins. Something that then leads into Will trying to teach Vocal Adrenaline students, a bunch of upper-class, predominantly white people, the idea of tolerance. with one of the smartasses saying this line to really illustrate how committed they all are to being absolute bastards.
Yeah, I think you're being intolerant to our intolerance, Will.
It's Mr. Schuster.
So, what does Will do to impart lessons to these kids? How does he break years of conditioning and privilege? Well, he does what Glee always does, which is assign the students a week of singing songs about being tolerant.
We're going to be taking turns performing songs dealing with the theme of tolerance. I will lead by example.
Yeah, that'll do it. And this gets us to our unique Adams of it all, as Will begins off the week doing his intro song with the aid of Unique, who used to be a member of Vocal Adrenaline before all of that kind of went to shit for her, but she is a trans black woman, so maybe seeing her sing will get these white people to be nice. Can't believe I just said that, but it is literally what Will is thinking at this moment. Will then starts rapping, and honestly, not to agree with the bully kids, but these reactions really do sum up this Lin-Manuel Miranda-ass bullshit that is getting pulled here.
When I was in the 3rd grade, I thought that I was gay, cause I could draw, my uncle was, and I kept my room straight.
I've got to skip through this because I'm cringing myself into an early grave already. Thankfully, Unique comes in and saves us from whatever the fuck was just happening, but not enough to change the minds of the kids, who tell Unique to shut up, okay, maybe don't do that, tell Will to stop rapping, okay, I actually agree with that, and then make it clear that they don't give a shit about gay, or trans, or bi, or black people. They just want to win. It's not about being bigoted or racist, they're just shitty people to everyone. The kind of thinking that then leads to the head bully of Vocal Adrenaline stepping up and suggesting that their new plan should be tricking the New Directions, the Glee Club good guys, into thinking that the Vocal Adrenaline people are intolerant of a whole group of people because that will trigger them and make them go all Will Schuster cringe mode.
This is genius. If we can get the New Directions worked up into thinking we're intolerant of an entire group of people.
Is that really the thing you want to do, buddy? You want to fake being a racist or a homophobe to upset people? I mean, maybe a rich white dude can get away with it in America, so... Actually, that might be a flawless plan for them IRL. But this is Glee Club world, where you can say that shit, but by season's end, you will be getting punished by the gay people that write this show. We then jump to our real main character of the episode, Coach Beast, who is just turning up to McKinley for the first day after having GRS and now living fully as a man.
So, say hello to Coach Sheldon Beast.
We get some inner dialogue from Sheldon here about how he's finally able to be himself. The usual trans rhetoric about how transitioning allows someone to live as who they've always felt they are, and the euphoria that goes along with getting to be that person. Good stuff to reiterate, to be sure. As soon as he gets in the building, he's greeted by Sue and one of the kids from Glee, who are both supportive of this change. Sue gives him a compliment, and the kid talks about how great it is for him to be in his true form, and they have tons of guy talk to catch up on. All of which seems to be overwhelming, mostly for the kid specifically, who has to get talked down by Sheldon.
You're fine, Sam. Just take a breath so you don't black out on me. Hey, Coach, I want...
Sue then drops some terms that she clearly picked up from some cursory reading on a website somewhere quite quickly, saying that she is ready to battle the scourge of cis-normativity and trans-misogyny in the school. And at this point, it feels like a plot point might be the overwhelming cisness of the support that Sheldon is getting. Like, you don't want transphobia, but sometimes it can also swing too far in the other direction, where it comes off as people not just treating you as a regular human.
Thanks, but I just want things to go right on back to normal.
Oh, that you might want things to continue as they have, But the overbearing manner that some people adopt for allyship makes it hard to just assume that status quo that you are seeking. Like, yeah, it's good to be on the side of trans people, but let the trans person in question dictate how that's gonna look for them. If they want to be a front and center activist for change, then let them do that. If they want to just be a trans person who is living their life, let them do that too. Sue is clearly okay with trans people, or is trying to be okay with trans people, but is also still a terrible person, as she exits this scene by saying the school is totally gender fluid now, whatever the fuck that means for a building. But she has spotted a fatty, and she needs to go and fat shame them.
All right, now if you'll excuse me, out of the corner of my eye, I see a fatty who could use a good, healthy fat shaming.
Yeah, that's healthy and normal to put in as a joke. Okay, timeout. There's a common theme for a lot of shows where fat or overweight people are treated as okay for being the butt of jokes. That in some way they've earned the derision they face for their body, and it's not really great that it gets to slide by so consistently as a joke without being challenged, when other forms of bullying would get called out. Thankfully, the episode gets to its trans tension properly, when Coach Beast is walking back to his car and finds it covered in what I think is toilet paper, spelling out the words Coach Tranny, and also maybe some underwear or paper towels or something. Regardless, it's very clear that Vocal Adrenaline found their group to hate on of choice to rile up the Glee Club, and that because of the characters in this episode, the wheels spun around to ding 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 trans people. Wow, really getting ahead of the conservative agenda on this one. Good guessing about what would end up becoming the hot button issue for right-wing politics globally in only a couple of years. Will gets dragged into his old school now to face the wrath of Sue, who is escalating this because it's Will's students technically who did the transphobic hate crime, and that has pissed her right off after she did that whole I'm an ally thing too, despite the fact that Sheldon is trying to brush it off.
I knew that there was a possibility that something like this was going to happen, so when it did, I wasn't all that surprised.
An attitude that I don't think is that uncommon amidst a lot of trans people, and is sort of smart of Glee to include. Quite a few trans people will act nonchalant around bigotry, will try to just go under the radar, because admitting it and facing it would require committing to the fact that the very existence of being trans in a lot of places forces you to be something of notice by virtue of who you are. Something which completely contradicts just wanting to live a normal life. I mean, going stealth exists for a reason after all. Will is really sorry about this and says that nobody goes after his friends and gets away with it. Though I think the line there should probably be, nobody gets to be a transphobic piece of shit at all and get away with it. Not just to my friends. And so, hopefully, this makes Will commit to doing a bit more than a tolerance week to break the intensely cis-white stranglehold on Vocal Adrenaline. We can hope, after all. The side story of this episode is that Rachel, the very white and frequently racist main character of Glee, is having to say goodbye to her childhood home. And so the New Directions Glee Club is doing a week dedicated to transitioning in honor of her needing to let go of childhood and transition to being an adult. An interesting choice to align the very serious story of transphobia with the upper class person having to leave their home because their dad sold it narrative.
Transition. Rachel, it's come to our attention that you're having some challenges with saying goodbye to your childhood home.
It definitely totally doesn't feel like it in some way diminishes the trans bit to interweave us with some fucking white ass chick having to leave her house. The kids from Coach Beast's team find out about what happened and storm into the teacher's lounge, which I'm pretty sure at least one of them can't do as a student, but they run in there anyway and tell Sheldon to tell them who did that to his car so they can kill the bastard. And frankly, I am here for that energy.
Which one of those rock lobsters was it?
Doesn't matter.
We're gonna kill those guys, Coach.
Beast sits the kids down and explains to them that he doesn't care about all of that he's dealt with ignorance his whole life, but the fact that he is still here, happy as who he is and living, is what really matters. And then he spins it around on the kids to talk about how they are finally part of the team and caring about each other, and that's what really matters here. It's a really sweet scene that showcases the relationship here between this teacher and the students who have clearly benefited so much from his influence.
Well, then they gave us the best friggin' gift in the whole world.
All of which is A+ for the fact that it incorporates a trans person into something without making it only about their trans identity. Coach Sheldon Beast is more than just a trans man. They have a whole broad life and interactions that exist extant from that identity. Will attempts to reprimand his students in Vocal Adrenaline, but that head bully guy stands up and says that being the winner is all that matters, and that Will is a loser, and that they're the last of a dying breed of those who are willing to be the bad guys to get what they want. Which, that's not a good attitude to adopt. It's a very white one, but not a great one.
Which is that every person on the planet knows winning is everything.
All of this ultimately leads to Will finally doing what he should have done from the start, which is to kick the head bully off the team. Like, this guy has been consistently making it clear that he sees himself as the real head of Vocal Adrenaline, and that he will do whatever it takes to disobey Will. So just remove him. While you're at it, cut the brakes on his car. Hopefully he'll die. Just a suggestion, they would do it in Riverdale.
I will ruin you.
A bunch of that Glee stuff happens, all the singing and shit that people do. There's some atrocious dancing.
Who's around when you're losing your mind?
But 10 minutes later, we get back to Coach Sheldon in the lockers doing some inspection as a figure approaches. A figure that is unique. Yes, we finally got it.
As I live and breathe.
Unique. Oh, girl.
This is a scene that passes the Simpson test, a new test that I'm making up, like the Bechdel test, where a trans episode features only trans people in a scene talking to each other with no cis interactions to distract from the conversation. Write it down as a term, the Simpson test. Spread it to your friends, the Simpson test. Let's get it trending, the Simpson test, so that when I die, I can feel that I've had some small impact on the world. Unique appropriately reams out Sheldon for the fact that she had to find out that he transitioned from Will, of all fucking people, the most cis white man of them all, and Sheldon concedes that yeah, he should have kept her in the loop about being trans.
I should have called. I just didn't know what to say to people. You know, it's all been a bit overwhelming.
And then he talks about what we've seen in this episode. The fact that being himself around others has been overwhelming to some degree. That being who he is and fitting in is such a difficult task. He feels normal inside now, but people are not treating him as normal. To which Unique responds with the fact that being trans visibly and openly makes you special, by virtue of the fact that you are effectively telling the world that who you are means more to you than bending to the whims of what they want you to be.
And not because of some surgery, but because you're brave enough to go out and get something when you want it.
Sheldon understands this, but does just want that normality. Does just want to be accepted in a way that doesn't make him feel different. Specifically saying this attitude that I think a lot of trans men probably do recognize or feel similarly.
I just want to be one of the guys, but there's no one else like me here.
He also mentions how hard it is being the only trans person at the school, that there is nobody else like him, And that makes it more tricky to talk about this stuff, because you can't really go over it with cis people, as well as the fact that other trans people are more likely to treat you normally. Illustrating the essential nature of the Simpson test, I think we can all agree. Having trans people interact with one another really allows for discussions to get deeper than the shallow waters that most trans representation audiences see treads. Unique assures Sheldon that he isn't alone, a reminder of the importance of community, the group that transcends many barriers to exist in unison because of what we share.
I wish sometimes I wasn't going through it all alone. You're not alone.
On the other, cis side of things, Will goes back to vocal adrenaline and tells them that he is willing to do things their way, the winning way, informing them that he has an idea for a prank to end all pranks, clearly luring them into some kind of trap.
And to prove to you guys that I'm serious, I have come up with a prank to end all pranks. Bring it in.
The trap being that, oh no, he's lured them into a song being sung by Unique. Yeah, that really worked the first time. I'm sure if you keep bombarding them with music, eventually it has to work. Like some sort of audio brainwashing torture.
There's a light.
Will seems really proud of himself for this one, but like, yeah. Unique's a great singer, and this is a great song, but what are we doing here? Why is Coach Sheldon here with her? He can't sing. Oh wait, never mind. This ain't just Unique and Sheldon. She has a whole backup choir of hundreds of trans people helping her out. That's the community, baby. That's the whole lot of us. Now descend on vocal adrenaline, my people, and kill them for their bigotry. Or I guess just keep singing, that works too. That's probably actually fine. The message here is the thing that matters. That the community exists despite the bigots. That together we are stronger than them. And I kinda like that. Especially with how Coach Sheldon was talking about feeling alone at the school as a trans man. Everyone is cheering and happy and on the stage by the end of the song. Well, everyone except for Will and the vocal adrenaline kids, who for some reason have stuck around, even though it was clear immediately that Will set them up for this. Like, you guys know you can just leave.
I knew you were full of crap. Your little kumbaya lesson here cost us 2 hours of valuable rehearsal time.
But no, they give Will the chance to tell them why he got into the arts, why he cares about people, and what music can do for bringing people together, which all leads to Will quitting the vocal adrenaline team, realizing how he prefers how the other school operated much more even if he got paid less. Sue then appears, unleashes the dogs on the vocal adrenaline people, slashes the tires on their bus, and forces them into what she calls a march of death back home to consider their life choices on.
To consider how awful you really are.
The episode then ends on what I think might be the saddest thing I've ever heard, as Will tells the gay kid and Rachel they should pay attention to the kids in the Glee Club and tailor their lessons towards their problems, because they might eventually become the best friends they've ever had.
Well, you should get to know them, because one day they may be the best friends you've ever had.
Holy shit. I know they meant this as like a sweet moment, but just think about that for a second. Really wallow in it, if you will. A grown-ass man telling the people that he knew when they were kids in his classes that they're his best friends. Get outside more, dude. Get some other hobbies and friends your own age that you didn't teach at school. But anyway, that's the episode. Now, let's address quickly before we move on to my main conclusion about what Glee has done here in these 2 episodes, the people involved both in front of and behind the screens. We already covered how Unique is played by a trans actor, which is fucking great, and how Coach Sheldon Beast is played by a cis woman in a rather strange story arc when you think about it. Like, it's odd that they took Dot Marie Jones's character in Glee and transitioned them. Not because the actor transitioned like we saw with Elliot Page in Umbrella Academy, but because presumably they wanted another trans character and saw the butch lesbian as prime real estate to do that with, leading to us having a cis woman who played a cis character for a bunch of seasons, before then finding out that she's now playing a trans character. What I'm getting at here is that the usual criticism of this is that it would be better to have trans actors cast into trans roles, because it gives us an entry point into the industry, and also enables the audience to actually see us represented by us, as well as giving us some control over how we portray ourselves that might be beneficial, or make it truer to reality and the community. And well, all of that doesn't really apply, because this was a cis character at point of casting.
Transitioning from a woman to a man.
When you think about it, it's not that big of a stretch.
Okay, I don't get so you're
This Out magazine interview with Dot Marie Jones actually made me think more negatively of this choice by the showrunners for Glee to transition Coach Sheldon, because in it, Jones talks about the fact that she is no stranger to getting misgendered, that because of her features and height, there are many times she gets referred to as Sir in real life, which would make a character played by her a prime way to showcase that just because you might have what the binary considers as manly features, doesn't mean that you are a man if that's not how you feel. To transition her, and remember, this is not like a real trans person, this is a character, almost feels like a betrayal of that challenging of perception. While I can like the episode and how it handled trans stuff in universe, and the way it let characters interact and appealed to the wider trans community by getting a bunch of trans people on the show to give us more than just one person struggling alone, I think that externally we can recognize that this is not a perfect way to handle things. Digging into the people producing this, both in the director's seat, production seat, and writer's seat, the names that came up were Matthew Hodgson, Bradley Bucher, and Dante De Laurento, none of which ring any bells for trans inclusion there. It's kinda just the crew that one of the creators of Glee, Ryan Murphy, always seems to run with, having also worked with them for American Horror Story. There is a theme that comes up a lot with Ryan Murphy, a man who has been described as a powerful force in bringing attention for minorities to the masses through stuff like this and his other shows like Pose and Nip Tuck and Ratched. Also, holy shit, I forgot that he did the Netflix Dharma series. Remember that? Remember all the drama around that getting made and the think pieces about the idolization of serial killers? The issue is that you can be a powerful force going against the status quo, a status quo that would relegate minorities to blatant stereotypes or not include them at all, while still not doing it 100% great. We can applaud Ryan Murphy for including trans characters in a way that doesn't demean or grossify them, and does pass the Simpson test. I will keep hammering that home until it goddamn catches, alright, while still recognizing the flaws that exist within the series. Which brings me to the main conclusion for Glee here. And I know I've missed some episodes that might be of interest as well, like the unique one where she has to deal with bathroom issues in McKinley, getting harassed by a group of boys for using the girls' bathroom, and ultimately leading to her having to use the single-sex staff bathroom, which is not a great compromise, as it basically denies her the same treatment and experience that other girls get at the school, though it's certainly seen as a step up and an improvement from the suggestion that Sue gives of Unique using a porta potty covered in question marks.
I need to use the magic bathroom.
Yeah, that Sue is really a trans ally, huh? What a trans-supportive person. No wonder she goes on to be the Republican VP. I mean, that's basically all you need on that episode, to be honest, actually, so I guess I didn't miss that one. But I think in that, it already illustrates what I'm gonna say here. Glee does some things right, while massively screwing up other things, demonstrating that issue that kept coming up, which they seem to have removed the depth and deeper analysis of the morals they're trying to espouse, and replaced them with 15 minutes of song covers. It's also clear they didn't have trans people involved in the creation process that strongly, because it's all still surface level while being a bit deeper than usual. I mean, you saw that in the Saturday Night Gleaver episode. Unique barely got any screen time at all for her story and for her characterization, all of which really feels like the actor won the competition and then they just sort of threw something together for it. We already mentioned the issue that I had with Coach Beast being transitioned, despite the fact that I do like the direction of the acting and how they approached the character and the issues they faced, giving us a real insight into a side of the community and issue that we have not so oft seen considered by shows. But at the core of that, what I'm saying here is that we're so used to such a shitty bar that Glee looks good by comparison, but that doesn't mean it's good. Ultimately, I would say that Glee is more on the positive side of trans representation. It's far from perfect, but it is certainly trying to show the community in a light that addresses challenges we face and gives the audience a bit more insight into us that hopes to humanize our experience. It also does feature both trans femme and trans masc inclusion, which is nice, because we're normally stuck getting one or t'other, but it could still have done a lot more.
I cannot believe Unique pulled that off. Something to be said about the power of a dream.
If you liked what I said here, or liked what I did, then you can give me a like, share, subscribe, or comment. You can also go and check out some of my other videos if you want to see more trans inclusion from various shows and movies, or if you want to spend 10 hours on Harry Potter lore. I've got some good stuff in there, not to toot my own horn, and I think that it really does build a case for the variety of trans representation that exists, all of which helps to illustrate what can be done to get it right. If you really, really liked what I did, you can go to my Patreon or Ko-Fi and subscribe there, which is really helpful for keeping the channel running and for letting me get money to do what I do. The names of those in the 5 drawn up categories should be scrolling past the screen right now, and I really do appreciate everyone on there for helping me to feel supported in making what I want to make, allowing this rather unique part of YouTube to continue going despite whether it's in the zeitgeist or popular at the moment. I've got hundreds more video ideas, some of them not even trans related to make, and it means so much to me to have people facilitating that creative expression. Especially right now because New Zealand isn't a great place for getting a job. Certainly more true if you have a sociology/media degree during a time period when all the jobs that will look at that degree are kind of closing, and experience working with YouTube, which for some reason just isn't that exciting to employers. And I do need to pay for rent, food, power, and internet to keep this whole thing going. Anyways, with all of that said, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great, gleeful day. I'm not going to sing a song at the end. I was going to do a little song at the end, but I was like, I suck at singing, and I don't want to do this, so that's it.